Okay, so as promised, we're going to look at some examples of command injections. Well, first of all, Cisco is always a good place to see how easy real-world devices can be exploited. So this Cisco root router, which is used in small to medium-sized companies a lot, had a command injection vulnerability. How did it work? Well, on the router's web interface, after you logged in, you could generate certificates for this router. And on the web interface, you could input various different kinds of data. For example, common name, location, email address, that kind of stuff. And as you can see, common name and email address and those things, they have placeholders %s. These will be replaced by user input. And then the router took the user input and executed this command here on the command line via the exec function. So on the website you could input, for example, the email address for the certificate, and then on the router it would call this OpenSSL subprogram on the command line. Well, it's kind of obvious how you could maybe exploit this now. Well, you could use an email address called something apostrophe, and then here the email address, the apostrophe would terminate this string on the command line, and then afterwards you can just write your commands, for example, with the $ brackets, and then use the ls command to list files, and then use the curl command to redirect the output of the ls command into a post parameter, it's -d, and then add dash means -d means do a post request and use the following data. Add means use a file, and dash means use stdin. So whatever ls prints is used as a post parameter to this URL that we control. So with this type of exploit, you could execute arbitrary commands on the router itself. Well, maybe now you think, okay, that's not so bad because you have to be in the local network to access the web interface and you need to log in on the web interface. Well, you could chain this remote code execution vulnerability with the fact that because Cisco screwed up, the web interface was accessible from the outside, so from the internet, and the login form could be bypassed. So attackers from the outside could very easily just execute code on your router and then either traverse and go inside your network or just reconfigure your router so the data would be forwarded to their servers. A funny side note, Cisco needed a couple of months to fix this vulnerability, and they fixed it in the following way. They banned the curl user agent string. As you've seen in HTTP, often in the headers there's a user agent submitted to the server, so the server knows what kind of software he's talking to. And what Cisco did is they just banned the curl user agent. This is of course not a very good fix because we can just tell curl to tell the server he's another user agent, or we could just use another user agent, such as wget. So what they did here is they just banned the tool a hacker would use, and not in a very good way. Obviously you can bypass this fix very easily. Okay. Another example is Imgur. I don't know if you know this website. It's a website where you can upload images, and they had a cropping feature. So if you would upload a picture, afterwards you could crop it. You could say, okay, I just want this part from here to appear. to appear in the image. So they did that via a sub-process called graphics magic. So they did an exec, graphics magic, this and that. It's very similar to image magic. And when you were cropping on their website, this HTTP GET request was issued. And here their parameters, A crop is the function that's used, X parameter and Y parameter where we want to start, and then the width and the height. So what was possible to do on Imgur was the following. You would set the Y parameter in this HTTP request to something like this, 0 space minus right. Minus right is a command line parameter for the ImageMagick program. That just means write the output to this file, and then you can start the file name with a pipe. So write the output of the ImageMagick command to ls. ls ignores the input. ls gets executed and sends it output to the curl command. Here the internal field separator is used, and then the output of the ls command is sent to curl and is then sent back as a post parameter to our web server. So essentially we have remote code execution on the Imgur server, and we can exfiltrate the output of our commands via curl, for example. Another side story, this happened to us during a CTF. We were participating in the Google CTF finals, and they on the server side were using ImageMagick to convert files, but there was no injection possible directly on the command line. But as it turns out, ImageMagick itself, so the convert command that we have seen earlier, sometimes also calls subprocesses for specific file formats. In this case, you could use the .show file format. As you can see here, it was possible to inject a semicolon, and then not the web application itself, but ImageMagick would call a subprocess, and in this case, with the semicolon, you could inject arbitrary code. In this case, the echoes a base64 string for some reasons that I'm not going to go into detail here for, and decodes it on the command line and then gives the output to the shell. We solved this task at the Google CTF final actually, but we solved it differently. We found a 0-day in GhostScript, which is another subprocess that's callable by ImageMagick. There it runs in a sandbox, but we were able to escape the sandbox.